We're live. We are live. We are live. And 5, 4, 3, 2. Hello and welcome to the Freemasons podcast. I am your host, Right Worshipful Brother George Mudry, and with me tonight,
Worshipful Brother Joe.
Worshipful Brother Ken.
And we are about to start the Civil War and Freemasonry, and we're going to cover some interesting stories and interesting history about the two. But first, we're going to plug our sponsorship, www.freemasonspodcast.com. I have white Freemason podcast shirts that I'm still selling for $15. Hit me up through Facebook Messenger. I take PayPal and Apple. On top of that,
New collection was released today.
The Joe Normus shirt is up.
Oh.
And for those who are interested, it's a gorilla with a Masonic apron, and it says Joe Normus on the back.
Fairly certain I picked the past master's apron on that one. Fairly certain.
I believe you did. I don't really have the image in front of me, but let's get some shout-outs. Danny Collins, Dylan Schultz, David Hernandez, Taylor Stringfellow, which I've talked to before, which I find funny that he popped up again, but whatever. Jonathan Gatto, Josh Bergano Ibanez. If I butcher your name, I apologize. But somebody fill my cannon because we're going to toast these boys. Thank you for your support. Thank you for liking and sharing and all that stuff. And hold on. Check this while Joe's doing this.
Cannons are charged in a line.
All right. So, brethren, right hand, all arms.
To arms.
Ready.
Ready.
Aim.
Aim.
Fire. Good fire. Fire all. Together, brothers.
Viva, viva, viva.
All right. Two other plugs I want to do. I want to do the Morningstar Car Show, which is going to be taking place in September. So if you'd like to come down, we're going to be there. Seymour Pink. I also want to plug that too. Pounding the Pavement for Pink. And we're going to be running under Leonetti's Lions. And it's to raise money for breast cancer awareness. Joe, you want to make your plug?
Of
Farm Degree.
Oh, Farm Degree, yes. September 14th in Monroe, Connecticut, starting at 4 o'clock. We'll do the first half, barbecue during the intermission, and then we will be doing the full tragedy after that. Usually, that part usually starts around 7:30 or so.
Now, I heard through the grapevine that your first ruffian is going to be probably he's an all-star cast member. Is that correct?
I'm hoping so. I've never seen him perform, and I do have some questions regarding his performance. However, he's been hired, and hopefully he'll be up to the task.
He'll be up to the task.
But we also have the entire Grand Line is going to be at this event.
That's
we
awesome.
Confirmed the date with Most Worshipful Grandmaster Mel Johnson last year, and that's how we actually picked the date. So he'll be there. They will all be present, so it should be a good time. Usually we have brothers coming from other states, Rhode Island, New York, sometimes Massachusetts. We're hoping this one's going to be a big one since the Grand Line officers will be there.
We have our first question, and it's from Worshipful Brother Chris Martinelli, and he writes, why is Worshipful Brother Ken Tarwood wearing short shorts? He says Bumblebee Tuna.
They're not short shorts.
They may look that way on camera. I'm going to come to Worshipful Brother.
They're regular. They go to the knees.
Yes,
They go to the knees, Brother Chris.
they're like plaid jams.
Your balls are showing. Bumblebee Tuna.
Now I'm going to be self-conscious the rest of the podcast.
I think you look great. I think you look fantastic.
All right. I want to plug Patreon. What I've been...
We've got Puppet George's shawl over there. You can grab that.
Yeah, I can throw the shawl over my pasty legs.
Puppet George did a little preview.
A little intro. Yeah.
A little intro. He's pretty
funny.
good.
He's got jokes for everything.
He's got jokes. Clearly, he's
Give
got
him a little
jokes.
time. He's got jokes.
I want to plug our Patreon.
Yeah, right.
I'm not sure.
Everybody
probably shouldn't wear the shorts in public because
everybody's doing the short shuffle right now.
I don't
You're
like-
good though. You're covered underneath the
I
desk.
don't like
so.
the seat. I feel like I should sit that way.
Whatever you want to do. Your world. They're just living it.
Thanks,
Patreon.
brother Chris, for ruining it. You ruined it.
I want to plug Patreon. If you sign up for Patreon, what I've been doing is, and maybe this is just me, people who have been signing up for Patreon, I said each tier is going to have different things. Like you're only going to be able to listen to the bloopers on Fellow Craft or Master Mason or Past Master. But I've been putting it up for everything. Because you know what? Honestly, you contribute what you want or what you can contribute to us. You shouldn't be barred from the access. So sign up. 3, 5, 7, or 9, whatever you can contribute, and you'll get full access to everything. I'm not differentiating between
Should have special trinkets for the highest level. So.
I do. And I'm still working on that.
And all that good
and
stuff.
I'm getting Freemasons podcast Patreon pins made.
Nice.
I'm running into some finance problems with it. So the more people sign up for Patreon, the faster I can get this pin.
Better swag we have to hand
and
out.
it's basically just going to get our it's going to be our podcast logo, and that's pretty much it. I also put out a challenge to some people on Facebook. Joe, do you remember my challenge?
Well, you put a couple out there. One was a theme song, and I'm waiting to hear back on that one.
We've had a couple of people
logo was another one.
The logo was the
I was
other,
going to change and give someone the access to send me a picture, and Peter Daigle actually was the first one. He's not a brother yet, but he will be. He actually rose to the challenge and made a couple of images, which I like.
Cool.
And I'm kind of leaving it up there. But again, our podcast logo is going to be our podcast logo forever, but I want to make an alt one. Mm-hmm. So, and again, you can pull from anything. You want to make a logo that's crossed cannons and crossed sabers in the bottom for our pirate. I'm down with it. You want to do anything. But I definitely want. Chris Martinelli writes, "Those legs are so white, it looks like a ghost."
Oh my God!
He's a ghost hunter, isn't he? He would know. He's an authority on the matter.
Thanks,
brother.
He looks like a young Arnold Palmer. What?
Wow!
I'm gonna turn the camera higher. Hold on.
You're gonna stand behind the curtain.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Oh God, perfect. Yep, that's perfect.
But why don't you stay standing and show that they are knee length.
His legs are still in the camera.
Like normal size golf shorts.
His legs are still in the camera. I'm not moving it.
What are you saying?
What?
Oh,
no, nothing.
Oh, okay.
Just move it. All right. So moving on.
So self-conscious now.
I'm telling you, grab the shawl.
But anyway, sign up for Patreon on top of all the Kabbalion, which we just did. We just did the Kabbalion and the different seven principles.
Yep.
And we're going to be moving into the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which are part of the mystery schools as well. We just finished the last of the Kabbalion. We're going to be moving to that. But also, you can be part of Discord, and you can actually have all-day conversations with the three of us goons. And
each other. It's a lot of fun. I tell you, I hop in sometimes to see the conversations that I missed, and I actually feel bad for missing them.
I love when Rob Fowler
fun.
posts some of his stuff.
Oh, he posted the phone calls from the guy the other day. I loved it.
So if you're interested in the Illuminati Brotherhood heckling that we do, he posts pictures up.
Guy was pretty adamant that he needed a lamb, not a goat. He was pretty adamant it had to be a lamb.
It's hysterical. So one of the things I want to do is I want to apologize for our last show. We had I don't even know what the hell happened last. The audio, the video, it was a cluster of just things just went shit sideways.
Ghost in the Machine.
Yeah, the Ghost in the Machine, just from iRobot. It just did whatever the hell it wanted to do. It kept kicking us off of live. I promise you that is not going to happen this time. My audio went freaking crazy. My computer shut off, but I have full battery. So I just want to apologize for the last show. The part that I had to cut out was the shock collar. But if you were interested in seeing the shock collar segment that we did on, you said, Worship Brother Ken, Facebook came out. It came out crystal clear, right?
Yeah, there's a Facebook Live recording that was about 45 minutes long. I think it was the longest stint that actually worked.
Right.
And that includes the entire Masonic shock collar trivia segment. So
awesome.
Check it out.
So we're going to move on to the next. And what we have been doing is George Washington's Rules for Freemasons in Life in Lodge. And again, if you want to listen to the full part of George Washington's Rules of Civility and Decent Behavior in Company and Conversation. It is on Patreon. But for this, we're just going to pick out the ones that this book basically picks out the ones that apply to Freemasons. So we're going to go to number 39. In writing or speaking, give to every person his due title. Wait, I covered that one, didn't I?
That sounds familiar.
I think it sounds familiar. We'll do 2 then. How's that? According to his degree in the custom of place. That is to say, begin our conversations, emails, letters, and phone calls in the respectful fashion until a familiarity is established or granted. Address strangers by titles such as Mr., Mrs., Doctor, etc. with the last name or with sir or ma'am, and not by their first name or nickname. Yes, we definitely covered that last time.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever. Recap. We're going to do number 44. When a man does all he can, though it succeeds not well, blame not him that did it. That is to say, encourage everyone regardless of the projects and goals they set. Even if they fail, encourage them to try again. I think that's a good one. And that's one we definitely we should always do, is to never tear somebody down for the things they're attempting to do, but rather build them up and look at the positive side of what they're trying to do.
Never look down on a man unless you are helping him.
We'll use this podcast. This podcast is we're doing this to try to getting people to join Freemasonry, and we're doing a hell of a job at it. We have multiple people from all over the country who have messaged me and us, and Joe, you've read a couple of them because you're now an admin on it. I think Ken, you are too, and we've read the notices of, hey, even the Apple iTunes. Somebody said, yeah, this is the only podcast I listen to, and it definitely helped me in my journey. So that's what we're trying to do, rather than saying, oh, they're swearing, drinking, and they got some dumbass puppet who's running around.
Well, he isn't those things. But there are some truths in the half-truth, right? We learned that with the Cavalier.
Yep.
Right.
But actually, remind me to talk to you afterwards. I've got some fairly recent developments regarding our podcast and some opinions regarding our podcast.
Something we can't talk about online?
I'd rather not.
All right. Let me wait.
Oh, suspense.
Cliffhanger.
All right. So we're going to get into our main topic. Freemasonry during the Civil War. And I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to let Ken take his first shots.
You want
and then we'll go Joe, and then I'll take over.
All right, brother. So there have been a lot of interesting stories that came out of the Civil War in regards to ties to Freemasonry. I think the most obvious and the most talked about one is Armistead, right, during the Battle of Gettysburg and Pickett's Charge. That whole brother to brother thing, there was a statue made to that, and there's a lot of there's some truth to it, and there's also a lot of myth involved. So I didn't want to talk about that one because there's a lot to, there's too much on each side of the spectrum, and I didn't really want to have to pick it apart. But there are a few other stories as well, and one of the best ones that I've read is about St. Francisville, which is a township in Louisiana. Have you guys heard about this?
I have not heard about this.
Okay, so I'll give you a little bit of background. So in June, in the beginning of the summer in 1863, during the Civil War, the Confederacy had blockaded part of the Mississippi River. And it was at a place called Port Hudson, which is it was a strategic convergence of a couple different rivers, a couple different tributaries of the Mississippi and the Mississippi River itself. And there are some bluffs. There's some high ground on the shores of the rivers, and these were considered to be strategic area for obvious reasons. So the Confederacy blockaded that route with several ships and also fortifications along the shoreline.
Brother Seth.
What's up, Brother Seth?
We
I haven't seen you in a while.
We're Facebook Live. Say hi.
Hi, guys.
Brother Seth, how are you?
Good, how you doing? Well, Ryan's getting married. If anyone wants to come to the Stag, August 24th, Polish American Club.
Is that what you're here for?
Yeah.
You here to plug that?
You just plug in the Stag?
Plug in the Stag.
Maybe Gideon can come.
Nah.
To ship them across the pond.
Go ahead, Ken.
All right, so there was one Union ship that made it through this blockade, and it was the USS Albatross. I don't know if you guys have heard that name before.
Don't think so.
It went on to do some other things after this, but it was the one ship to run that blockade, and it was captained by a man named Hart. Let's see here, Lieutenant Commander Hart. Now, at the time that they ran this blockade, just before they reached Port Hudson, there was a town called St. Francisville on the banks of the Mississippi River in Louisiana, and there's a lot of high ground on one bank, and there was a church. It was actually the Grace Episcopal Church, high up on this bluff, and it was, as most churches are, kind of at the center of the township. And as the Albatross was running this blockade, it decided to shell St. Francisville, where there was a large contingent of Confederate billeted. And they started shelling the church because the church was obviously, you could see the steeple. It was an obvious center of that township. So they were shelling it from the river.
Hold on a second, Ken, if I may interrupt. Are you really drinking seltzer beer? Get out. Get out.
Seltzer? Ruby grapefruit, too.
Hey, Ken, can you go in the freezer? All right, Ken. Can you go, Seth? Can you go, brother Seth? Can you go in the freezer? There's one sitting there.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ken. Sorry.
Okay. So we'll continue. I'm good right now. So obviously, this is just to give you guys some context. This was one of the bloodiest parts of the war. This was 1863. So this was a couple of years after the war had started.
Thank you.
And there were battles raging everywhere. There was, it's a civil war, the United States Civil War, for those of you who may be from across the pond and may not know. This was a war that pitted brother against brother. There were literally families that were split by this war, and there were brothers that were fighting for the Union, the Confederate armies, and they were fighting each other. So it was a pretty divisive conflict in the nation's history.
So let's go over the history of the if we may, real quick. For those who don't know what the American Civil War was about, it was about two things: slavery, which the North was against, South was for. It was also about money as well. The North was very rich with different businesses and all that stuff, and the South was pretty much farmers.
Agriculture.
Agriculture. And there was a big divide. You also had Democrat against, I think it was Republican at that point, right? Democrat, Republican, and I believe it was the Republicans who were anti-slavery and the Democrats were pro-slavery. Am I correct?
Yeah, the political parties meant different things.
Political parties meant different things. Yeah. And so that's pretty much, that was the reason. What ended up happening is, I don't remember who's running against him, but I know that Abraham Lincoln was running for president. He was a Northern Republican, if I'm correct. And he was against a Southern Democrat, I believe, if I'm not standing correctly.
Might need fact checking.
I mean, fact checking. But what ended up happening was
Rocco's not here.
Rocco's not here. It's all right. But it basically what the Southern states had said is that if Abraham Lincoln wins, they are seceding from the Union. And it ended up starting with the basic Southern ones seceding from the Union, such as North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, a bunch of other ones. They seceded from the Union. And then you basically had, I don't remember if Maryland seceded, but you had like the states that were considered Southern states, but they kind of stayed with the Union, or they were split. They really didn't know what to do. And you have, I'm going to get you a mic. You want one? Are you sure? Okay. You sure?
So just to jump in with some fact checking here, Abraham Lincoln was a Republican from Illinois that ran against John C. Breckinridge,
right,
who was not only a Democrat but a Southern Democrat.
Southern Democrat.
And that's where the rub came in. But
so
Lincoln won by,
I think it was
almost 1 million votes.
I was
it was like
1,800,000
to 800,000.
It was a landslide. I know that. And the Southern states basically flipped out and said, "The hell with this shit. We're out of here."
Which is unthinkable this day and age. Like, you can't just the United States is a united series of states that have individual rights and say, we're not part of the country anymore.
And it was founded that it was unconstitutional that they left the Union. And basically you had the first battle, which was, correct me if I'm wrong, was it Antietam?
I don't know if Antietam was the first. It was one of the bloodiest.
It was one of the
battles
bloodiest.
War,
But that,
I don't remember the name specifically, but I
That's
do
close
know
to-
that they thought it was going to be a farce.
they thought it was
People
going to be a
actually,
farce. Actually, Rich
had
showed up.
tickets. Yeah.
The rich people had showed up in their carriages and their, their
Yeah.
big weird hats, and they had the
Well, they did that.
umbrellas.
They did that throughout the war. You know,
Right,
that
but
was
this
a
particular
spectacle.
battle, they thought it was going to be a freaking landslide, and the South lit them up.
Yep.
Yeah, and they never thought
They never thought it was
that
going to
was
be.
actually going to happen. It was
Yeah.
like a spectator sport.
It was a spectator sport. They never thought that was going to happen. They thought the South was going to get basically their ass handed to them, and it turned out that I think the North actually lost the first battle, if I'm not correct. Again, we're all
The
fact
first
checking.
major battle was Battle of Bull Run
Bull Run.
Hold
Okay.
on.
in Manassas, Virginia.
Yes. And I think the South ended up winning that one. They routed the North, I think, and they were like, "Oh, shit!
Yeah.
Like, this is a
real,
Yeah,
for real
these
war
aren't some
now.
ragtag like
these
Bad
aren't
News
some-
Bears kind of
Right,
people.
yeah.
They might actually have
Right.
something here.
And so that's pretty much how it started, and then it got rolling from there. And it was the Gettysburg again, of course, was the bloodiest battle in the entire Civil War, but it got nasty for a while there.
Yeah.
And then once there was a lot of things that happened, but continue on.
Yep. During this point in time, this was 1863. So this was the summer of 1863, which was kind of the
And it started in
bloodiest
1860,
times throughout.
correct?
1861, I think, is the unofficial
61,
start,
yeah.
something like that.
Right.
But it's a war that didn't really last all that long as far as span of time is concerned. But there were
Correct.
a lot of lives lost during the course of that war. It was a very
Right.
bloody war. So to get back to where I was, the Albatross was running this Confederate blockade on the Mississippi River. Before it gets to Port Hudson, it reaches the bank of a town called St. Francisville in Louisiana. So, of course, they start, shelling the city. They know the Confederates are billeted there. They start shelling the church because it's an obvious landmark. And then all of a sudden, as quickly as the battle began, the guns silenced. Right? So the Confederates, who were scrambling for their lives, were amazed by the fact that the guns stopped. I mean, the gunship Albatross had them zeroed. They were landing shells in the city. What could possibly have happened? So the Confederates go down to the bank of the river, and they see a small runabout launch from the Albatross under a white flag of truce. So of course they have
Could you
no
imagine
idea
a bunch
what's
of
going
Confederates
on.
running to the banks of the river and going, "What the fuck?"
Yeah. I can only imagine that's
It's a
basically
trick.
what happened. Yeah. Well, I mean, there was a lot more honor in war back then. So when you flew a white flag, you let them say their piece. So they there's also no communications or anything back then. So they let this runabout come ashore. And aboard the runabout is Lieutenant Commander Hart, his lifeless body, along with some of the senior staff members on the ship.
Right.
And what ended up happening was Lieutenant Commander Hart was actually racked with fever. Right? He had some sort of infection or something. Obviously, medical science hadn't come quite that far back then. And he was so mad with fever, basically went insane, took his own life, shot himself in the middle of the battle.
Well,
So
I also want to add that, and again, it's kind of like an awareness to even veterans to this day that battle has its form of PTSD with people.
absolutely.
And, one of the things that I really want to make aware is veterans with PTSD who suffer from battlefield trauma. I mean, it's a real thing.
Yep.
And again, I just want to add that, a veteran commits suicide every 22 minutes. So support a veteran.
Yeah, it's not something to be trifled with. There may have been some measure of that going on with Lieutenant Commander Hart as well, but the accounts that I've read basically mostly attributed it to just fever.
Right.
He was very ill. So because that happened, obviously his compatriots put him aboard that runabout, brought him to shore, met with the Confederates on the shore, and basically said, our captain has lost his life, and we'd like it if we could, have a brief truce, bring his body up to Grace Episcopal Church in order to give him a proper burial with full Masonic rites. Which, luckily, on the Confederate side, there was an officer, W.W. Leake, who happened to not only be a fellow Mason, but also a warden. Didn't say whether he was a junior or senior warden, but one of the principal members of the lodge of St. Francisville's Masonic Lodge. So, of course, he was obviously sympathetic to his enemy's plight, allowed them to transport the body up to the Episcopal Church, which is a very steep bluff to get up to the church, organized the entire service, and he was buried with a proper soldier's funeral and full Masonic honors.
Wow.
So you can imagine something like that happening this day and age, where, I mean, first of all, the Civil War, you have to remember that obviously it was a war of brother against brother. It was fellow countrymen against countrymen. And we all had, at that point, for the most part, all these men that were fighting against each other were Christian. Right? So they had,
as a matter of fact, the Battle Hymn of the Republic was a Christian song.
Yep. Right. So they had that common experience among themselves. And then there were a lot of Confederates and Union soldiers that were Masons.
I'm going to give Seth a mic because if he
back.
talks without the mic one more time, I'm going to just toss him.
Okay. He's doing the Rocco
You're
thing.
getting out of here, or are you staying?
I'll see if you guys want to buy a ticket. But
I don't have cash on me. Otherwise,
I don't know.
otherwise it
I've
was.
got no
What
cash.
else?
I got no cash on me.
what's the next topic for next week? How much do we put?
We don't know yet. We'll get there.
All right. See you
I'm not
guys.
chasing you out. I'm just saying.
No, it's fine.
All right. I'll
Take
see you
care,
later,
brother.
Seth.
So, right. So, like I said, all these men
Hello, all.
in this war, they had the common bond of all being Christian men. They had the common bond, a lot of them, of being Freemasons. So you have to remember, these are the guys that are fighting against each other. And when something like this happens, it was not that much of a stretch for them to put an end to hostilities long enough to honor something that was important to them.
Right. Worship Brother Ken, you have Brother Joseph Schultz saying, maybe worshipable, I don't know. Worship Brother Ken, any traveling lodge in a reenactment until that you have come across?
I don't know what you just said.
Any traveling lodge in a reenactment?
Any traveling lodge in a reenactment, like a Civil War reenactment?
Yes, that you have come
Wow.
across.
Good question. I've never attended any reenactments. I have a couple.
You just did one, didn't you?
Well, no, we did the Civil War entered apprentice degree. So it's basically a regular entered apprentice degree performed by our lodge outdoors at a different venue, and we dress in traditional Civil War regalia.
North or
along
south? Or both?
Both.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, we have an equal number of Confederate and Union costumes for that degree, and we also do it with
What is that?
That's got to be outside, I think.
some kind of screaming outside. It's interesting.
Sorry,
Okay.
folks.
Sorry, folks. That was
Yeah,
weird.
So we
It's
don't
usually pretty
actually.
quiet up here. It's usually pretty quiet.
It must be right below the window.
Yeah.
So it's not a reenactment. It's not done during an actual Civil War reenactment.
Yeah. There's two people literally below the window, so that's what you're hearing.
Let's throw something out the window.
Interesting.
Boo!
Drop a bucket of water on it.
Boiling oil or something.
No, just
oil.
water would be fine.
Or you just have Puppet George out the window.
It's worth overdoing.
Shut up!
Keep it down out there.
Keep it down out there.
So anyway, now I forget where we were. I was talking
you were
about
talking about
the Civil War
your
degree,
Civil War
right.
degree.
So it's not a reenactment. That degree is an actual degree, and we just perform it in Civil War costuming and regalia and try to do it as authentic as we possibly can. There are a couple members of my lodge that are Civil War reenactors. One actually is very vehemently a Union reenactor, 8th Connecticut, born and bred. Worshipful Brother Hal Elwell. Had to call
He's
him
a
out.
Southerner, right?
No. He's a Union soldier. He's a Northerner.
He's
Yep.
a Northerner.
And then we have another great brother in the lodge, Brother Lou, who is a Confederate reenactor. and they're also best friends in real life and also Masonic brothers. So they
That's
constantly go at each other's throat. South will rise again. Oh, you yellow belly. They're
Somebody
like
else
always
said that.
going at each other's
Somebody
throats.
else said that earlier, didn't he?
Yeah, Puppet George, I believe.
Puppet George probably said something like that. But anyway, they're really, really big into reenacting. I could ask them, one or both of them, and ask them if they've ever come across a traveling lodge during their reenactments, but I don't recall any stories where they told me that they have, and I haven't experienced that. Good question, though.
Brother Douglas Berry Jr. says King Solomon's Lodge number 7 has 2 brothers that travel for the reenactment. And Brother Joseph Schultz says our unit has 12 brothers, 26th PA.
Cool.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Brother Joe,
Yes, sir.
why don't we move on to you? What do you got?
All right. So some fun facts that I found when I was doing some research on this. So of approximately, during the Civil War, approximately 410,000 soldiers were interned in prison camps. It's been estimated that about 56,000 of them were Freemasons. That's how, that to give you an idea of the scale, the amount of Freemasons in the Civil War, specifically in the prison camps. There's recorded stories that indicate how these Masons were true to their obligations and how they dealt with each other, even while performing their duties as soldiers. When they were confronted with a wounded or distressed brother, and there are instances of the sign of distress being given and recognized by other Masons.
When you get a chance, Joe.
Yep. Specifically, there's an example that involved a Lieutenant Colonel Homer Sprague, a 13th Connecticut volunteer, who was taken prisoner during a long march to the prison. Sprague became so exhausted that he collapsed into a ditch. A Confederate officer allowed him to ride in the ambulance for the remainder of the journey, and with some difficulty, he was able to climb into the vehicle, where he learned that the driver and the the driver and the Confederate officer were both Masons and recognized him as a Mason. So he was actually able to ride in the ambulance on the way. And the brother had allegedly said to Sprague, as a Mason, I'll feed you with my very last crumbs of food. But as a soldier, I will fight you to the last drop of my blood. To which Sprague replied, I hardly know which to admire most, your generosity as a Mason or your spunk as a soldier.
Yeah.
So these
that
were
gives you an
types of
idea of the duality that was there.
Yeah.
It's like we want to respect each other, but we're also enemies.
Right.
Tough thing to reconcile, man.
Yeah.
So it one thing that I wasn't able to find out was there had to be, like, these soldiers must have been wearing, I guess, the era equivalent of a lapel pin, or maybe stitching it into their uniform.
Sometimes they had patches. Sometimes they would pin a patch onto their uniform. I know.
Actually, I have a good story for that, actually.
So there must have been some way to recognize, because here that they saw, without him giving the sign of distress, they recognized that he was a brother Mason, and afforded a few more
could have had
opportunities to him to ride in the ambulance and not suffer as much.
Could have had a Masonic pocket watch.
Yeah,
something. Like that. Or a ring.
But they were also, Freemasons were referred to each other in those days as white apron men. So that was how they would refer to each other, I guess, to maybe keep it somewhat veiled from other people. Oh, he's a white apron man.
So you got another one, Joe? Or you
Nope. Good. I'll pass along to
So
you.
I got a couple of them. I got 2, actually, which I thought were quite impressive. And I'm kind of going to piggyback off of Joe over here. One of the first acts of Masonic charity to occur in the American Civil War occurred at the First Battle of Manassas, or Bull Run, on July 21st, 1861. The act was reported in the Boston Masonic Monthly, which started publishing in November 1863 and was edited by Edward Mitchell. Colonel W.H. Raynor of the 1st Ohio left his command in the company of 2 sergeants went to fetch water at a nearby creek. I'm sorry, I'm reading this and there's lack of punctuation.
It's all good.
They went to fetch water in a nearby creek. Suddenly, as they neared the stream, they heard the yell that eventually became known as the Rebel Yell which we all know the Rebel Yell.
The Rebel Yell.
She cries
And-
more and more and more.
Yeah.
No, that's not the Rebel
Is it
Yell.
Bon Jovi?
No, it's Billy Idol.
I always get them all mixed up.
In the midnight
I
hour,
left the
babe,
door open
cries
for you.
more, more, more.
With a Rebel Yell.
Cries more, more, more.
Should
Anyway.
we break into song now, or should we wait until later?
Okay. We're live, so we're already made asses of
That could be the
ourselves.
outro, but that is the outro. You post it.
In the thundering of hooves and hundreds of horses, Colonel Raynor instinctively raised his pistol just as the buckshot from a pistol hit the instep of his foot and numbed it. So instep of your foot is obviously the inside of your foot. That probably hurt like a bitch.
Yeah. Also, buckshot from a pistol. Like, these are the types of weapons you're dealing with in the
Right.
Civil War.
So those who don't know,
It's a shotgun pistol.
who don't understand pistols, and again, we're probably talking to a lot of our foreign audience because they don't really, I don't think that you're allowed to have pistols or guns or anything. But buckshot is basically a shell full of BBs.
Right, that
Yep.
spreads out.
That
and just
spreads out and
rips
just
you apart.
Rips you apart, exactly.
It sucks.
It sucks hard, especially if you're on the receiving end of it.
Yeah. Especially if you're a turkey. During turkey season.
Finding a large tree nearby, he dropped upon his knees and began to watch the battle rage around him. Horseman fired his pistol at Raynor and missed, and then as he passed by, struck Raynor with his saber. Ooh, Jesus. Lights flashed through Raynor's brain as he fell to the ground, senseless, looking almost dead. After a period of time, Raynor began to slightly becoming conscious, realized that someone was tugging at his clothes. Bewildered, he leaned upon one elbow and realized that the rebel soldier was stripping the dead. He had already taken Raynor's pistol, sword, canteen, and cap, and was trying to take his coat. The robber, being startled at the resurrection of the man he was trying to rob, jumped on his horse and rode off. Later, coming to his senses, Raynor realized that he was surrounded by Confederate cavalry. Two cavalrymen seeking him standing there Two cavalrymen, seeing him standing there, grabbed him between their horses and dragged him off to a considerable distance. Finally, one lifted him and placed him in front of his horse. They rode until they came to a group of rebel wounded. There he was placed upon the ground, and a group gathered around him, cursing him and calling him names. Before being weak from the loss of blood and considerable pain, he had just laid back and ignored them. He, being quiet, caused him even more of a commotion, to the point that one angry, wounded Confederate fired his pistol at Raynor but missed. You're a shitty shot if you're within close. I'm just throwing.
Well, maybe they had a head
Wounded
injury
too,
or
so,
something.
yeah, exactly.
They had a bandage over one eye.
Then the Southerner argued over this cowardly act. Argued over this cowardly act. So clearly his friends were like,
Dude, what are you doing?
hell?
The
Yeah,
guy's sitting there
exactly.
half
What's the
dead.
matter
You're
with
gonna
you?
take a
It's
shot
not
at him now?
honorable.
Stop it.
By this time, Raynor had almost wished that the ball had pierced his brain. Raynor was soon lifted behind a rebel cavalryman and carried to the junction about 4 miles away. Here, fresh Confederate troops were unloading and heading to battle. Raynor again met verbal abuse. It was now early in the evening, and the Southern wounded from the front were being treated at the junction in the stable. Raynor was taken first to the surgeon, who refused to treat him because he was a Yankee, and who said he had enough others to take care of his own army. So basically, the surgeon was like,
Yeah,
I'm not
screw
taking
you.
care
I
of
got
him.
enough of my own guys to take
Right.
care of. You're out.
finally, another more compassionate surgeon was found, and his wounds were taken care of. He was made comfortable as possible. So he was made as comfortable as possible, which means he was probably on his way out.
Given whiskey.
Right.
As a
Or
lemon.
these 2 gingers that we've been drinking. So,
Yeah.
I mean, 3 gingers, but 2.
Right. There's 2 in a bottle,
I'm
one in
not,
a
three.
I'm
chair.
not drinking the
Yeah.
3rd. I'm just saying.
2 in a bottle, 1 in a chair.
Only one
Okay.
corporeal ginger is here.
Right.
And I've been protesting the 2 gingers. I think it's discriminatory.
I think it is
I've been
too.
drinking the other one.
So he was treated from his
Exclusive.
wounds. And in response to Raynar's expression of gratitude, pointing to the Masonic pin on Raynar's shirt, Lemon replied, which was the doctor that took care of him, I can only hope that the same treatment for your men if I ever fall into their hands. If you will relieve the distress of suffering Brother Mason when in your power, I shall be well paid. Lemon then mounted his horse and rode away. So this was turned out that the doctor that took care of him was a Mason.
Mm-hmm.
Took care of him. This was a good one. And this is my my last one. And I thought this one was absolutely incredible. Another example is L.J. Williams of Harvard, New York, enlisted in the 114th New York Volunteers at the beginning of the Civil War. Excuse me. He received the Entered Apprentice and Fellowcraft degrees in Downsville Lodge number 464 prior to his leaving home. Later, during the war, he was captured and imprisoned near Savannah, Georgia. While in the prison, he communicated with his friends in the North. His lodge in New York, through the proper officials, got in touch with Zerubbabel Lodge in Savannah. If you know anything about Zerubbabel, it's very prevalent in the York Rite degrees.
Yep.
He was part of the. So anyway, the lodge members in New York got a hold of the Zerubbabel Lodge in Savannah and stated that they would consider it a favor in the lodge in Savannah if they would confer the 3rd degree on the Fellowcraft Brother Williams. One night, Brother Williams was taken from prison and conducted to the lodge room in Savannah. He only had his blue tattered uniform to wear, a token of his sympathy with the cause he believed in. The officers of the lodge were all in Confederate gray. Although on opposite sides of the struggle, going into the battlefields in the South, they were all brethren. He was then and there raised to the sublime degree of a Master Mason and acclimated a full brother and friend to those who wore the gray. Here's where it gets funny. Later that night, Williams escaped. When asked about his escape, he would smile peculiarly. Peculiar. I can never say that word.
No, it's a tough one. Peculiarly.
Peculiarly.
I'm not the usually Ken. I screwed up and Ken is right there.
Peculiarly.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Peculiar.
My mic stand is like a lot of problems right now.
But anyway, when he asked about his escape, he would smile with a sinister grin. We'll go
Like
with that.
somebody helped him escape, perhaps.
Right.
Yeah.
You might put it down as an escape, but it wasn't exactly an escape, strictly speaking. They put me in a boat and carried me off to some distance. Then they deposited me on neutral soil between the lines. From there, Williams was able to find his friends. Williams never knew who exactly helped him escape. This is great. You'll love this. He considered it to be their secret, and it was never disclosed. Williams stated, I know exactly to whom I may attribute to my escape. His name was Hiram. That is
pretty cool.
Awesome.
That's perfect.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That is a phenomenal story. I read that earlier. I'm like, wow, that's
cool.
awesome.
That is cool.
And for those who don't know, Masons communicate a certain way. And we've talked about funny little interesting ways that Masons communicate. One might say, hey, Joe, or hey, I see you look to the east.
Right.
And someone might reply, well, my name is Hiram.
Yeah,
It's a code.
there are
codes.
there are secret ways in which we recognize each other, and then there are not so secret ways.
Right.
And that's one of the not so secret ways. So
Right.
when I was coming back from New Hampshire, did I tell you guys about this?
Mm-mm.
I met a brother. He's a brother in a lodge in Cheshire.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Prospect. I'm sorry. He's from Prospect. And I was in Massachusetts on the way back from New Hampshire.
Probably Wilkett Lodge, if I'd assume.
If there's a Wolcott Lodge in
There is.
Prospect, then yes. I mean, I know there's a Wolcott Lodge in Wolcott, but at any rate, I mean, he had a. I didn't notice when he walked into the bathroom, but he had like a Prospect, Prospect Fire Company, whatever shirt on. And I was in the bathroom. I wasn't really paying attention. I was trying to get my kid to wash his hands in a restaurant, on
Which
the way
never
back.
happens
Yeah,
the way
it's
you
like
want it to
impossible.
work. It's like,
So I was doing the best I could, trying to get him to do it. And this guy walks by, or he's like waiting to use the sink or something. And he's like, "Nice job, Hiram." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks." And I'm like, "Wait a second. Wait, Oh, thanks, brother. And then we got to talking, and yeah, so that's one of those ways that you can, if you're in company, like it's not just you and some other potential Mason.
Right.
You want to keep it on the level so that if there are other bystanders, they don't.
Right.
They're not
And
privy to
just
anything
using
that
this
should-
story as an example, this is how Masons, in a way, keep their secrets. Because realistically, if he'd have been like, "Oh yeah, brother
So-and-so did
Ishmael,"
rattling off some
Yeah.
ritual or something.
no. If I'm talking about in the story of the Civil War, where he actually
He
the
knows-
Southerners
he knows
helped
his
him
name.
escape.
Oh, yeah.
He knows exactly who his name is.
Yep.
But the last thing he's going to be like, "Oh yeah, brother so and
He's not going
so
to point them
right.
out. Yeah.
let me loose. He let me
Yep.
go. They floated me upriver and got
Right,
let me."
that person could be
Because
tried as a
it could-
traitor.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. So he basically said, "Yeah, his name is Hiram." That's freaking. That's
That's
perfect.
genius.
I love it. Like, and I read that story when I was sitting on the couch. I'm like, wow, how freaking cool is that? Is that he wouldn't reveal his name? He just simply called him Hiram.
Right.
Yep.
I like that story. I was like, wow, that is freaking awesome. That
The
is
other
pretty-
cool thing about these stories, and I noticed it in my research and even just the three that we discussed, every example I found, or not every, the majority of the examples came from Southern Masons showing hospitality to the North.
Uh-huh.
I didn't find too many examples of the other way around.
Really?
I don't know that that's the case, but
I
I just
actually
didn't
have one.
see a lot of.
I actually have one.
all right,
If you want to read it.
I stand
It's,
corrected.
Yeah, we got to balance this out.
No, we got to balance this out. It's an example of how a lodge was saved. An entire lodge was saved. After 4 years of war, the weary and almost defeated Confederate army was retreating and leaving the Confederate capital of Richmond on its own fate. As the army retreated, fires broke out in all sections of the city. Hoodlums, deserters, and criminals with no law and order began to pillage the city. Just as the city seemed to be doomed, a Union cavalry unit swung up Franklin Street. The bearded colonel looked wearily at the riffraff around him who were about to fire a building which bore the sign Masonic Hall. Taking command of that moment, he halted the troops and ordered that an adjustment have all Masons wheel out of column. Almost half of his force moved out. From this group, he ordered the suitable guard to protect the Masonic temple. So he actually said, all
Protecting the
Masons in the
Southern
unit,
Lodge, yeah.
get out. He had them
get out there and
separate
go
from the
protect the
unit.
building.
And he
Yep.
said, you guys are in charge of defending that Masonic temple. How freaking cool is that?
Very cool.
And it wasn't. It was a Confederate temple.
It was a
right?
Confederate temple,
right,
but he actually made his Union troops
Ordered them
defend
to
that
defend.
temple.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The column reformed and resumed its ride. Later, General Godfrey Witzel, a Mason, gave the order after a request by the lodge to continue the guard. So they stayed even after they left.
Mhm.
They stayed in there and they guarded that temple. The building saved is said to have been the oldest purely Masonic building in America, with the records dating back to 1787, and the historical building itself was built in 1785 by Richmond Lodge Number 10. The Grand Lodge assembled here after its formation in Williamsburg until it moved in 1869. So the Union
So they
soldiers actually
Save
said
the historic
they saved the
Masonic
historical
Lodge.
building. They
That's
saved
cool.
the Masonic Lodge based off the fact that it was a Masonic Lodge. And
Wow.
that commander basically said, hey, all you Masons the
Right.
Masons that are in this unit, get out.
Mhm.
And he said, you're now in charge of defending that building. How freaking cool is
That
that?
is really cool. That is really cool.
That's and I want to do one
But
more.
we really shouldn't be shocked that commander was so awesome because he was bearded. I believe you
I think
mentioned.
he did have a beard. Yeah.
There we
Bearded
go.
guys are awesome.
Here we
Do
go.
we want to talk
So-
about that steamship too, or no?
Yeah, go ahead.
You want go for yours first. and then-
No. I
Okay.
the headline of this story is actually called "The Final Act by a Mason in the Civil War." So that's why I'm leaving it to you.
Okay, so we'll leave that one for the end.
We'll
Then.
leave,
All
we'll
right.
leave that to the end.
So I don't know how many you.
I'll be right back, fellas.
Okay.
Keep it rolling.
You may have seen this. Some of you brothers may have seen this elsewhere. There was a famous photograph taken, and remember, photographs was a new technology.
new
Photography
technology
was
then,
not like, it had not been around for a long time during the Civil War. But there was a famous photograph that was taken of a gunship. and it was, kind of an old Ironside looking ship. And I'll show you a picture of it here, Joe. I don't know if you've seen this one.
Oh, cool. No, I have not seen that.
Okay.
You mentioned it before on Discord, and I was like, no, I hadn't heard that story.
And I'll post this to the community page as well, and the Freemasons Podcast Facebook page, so that others can take a look at it too if you haven't seen it. But essentially, this was a steam-powered gunship. And if you look at this photo, there's the Union Jack at the back of it, because again, this was a Union vessel. And between the two smokestacks, or the exhaust stacks, whatever you want to call them, if you look really closely, it appears that there is a square and compasses between those two exhaust stacks.
Yes.
It's pretty clearly a square and compasses. Yes. Now, you might ask yourself, why would there be a square and compasses on a ship?
Why would there be a square and compasses on the ship?
I asked myself the same question, and I had to read this article about it. So this was actually a photo of the USS DeKalb, and the USS DeKalb was actually a renamed ship. It launched originally in October of 1861 as the USS St. Louis, and it was renamed when the war, really started getting fired up. Now, this photo was taken somewhere between when it launched on the 12th of October, 1861, and when it was sunk, which was in July, I believe, of 1863, when it hit a mine on the Mississippi River. We're not exactly sure exactly when this photo was taken, although there are some notes in the lower right-hand corner of the photo that indicate that it was taken during its christening, when it, on its maiden voyage. Which is even stranger because the captain at the time when it was first launched and all the principal officers on the ship were not Masons, or at least their Masonic, Masonic lineage could not be determined. Later on, toward the end of its career, there was a captain who was a Mason. There were several other members of its crew that were Masons, but when it initially launched from port, there were no Freemasons aboard. So it's strange. One would think, hey, if this photo was taken, shortly before its demise, it would make sense. The captain was a Mason,
right? But it was built that way.
Well,
right.
I'm sure you could, if you can. I'll post the picture. But if you look at it, it looks like there's two struts going in between the two stacks. There's actually a ladder still up there. And it looks like there's just a square and compasses made out of metal in between the two. So, that's something that they could retrofit on there. It didn't have to be part of the superstructure of the vessel. And in fact, there's no, those who have done research haven't found anything in the ship's records or, anything in any of the records about that ship that had anything to do with, any Freemason references, nor were there any mentions of that square and compasses between the stacks. So, it's a bit of a mystery. It's still a mystery to this day. There is no good reason for that to be there, but if you zoom in, again, it's pretty obvious.
It's certainly not a random thing. Somebody definitely did that deliberately.
Yep. So it's a weird one.
Very cool.
And of course, that ship was sunk, so it was lost in the bottom of the Mississippi River. We don't really have any physical evidence to examine. It was just one of those strange mysteries of the war. And again, this ship was probably on its way down to run that Confederate blockade that we talked about earlier. Because it was around the same time. It was about a month before that incident occurred. So,
Steve Saborin, he also said, "I agree. That's a great story. Awesome." So I'm going to do the final act by a Mason in the Civil War. It's going to be our closing for this thing, and then we're going to open it up for listeners' questions. Sorry, I had I don't know, something in my mouth. I don't know, marbles or whatnot. It was the morning. It was an April morning, 3 days after General Robert E. Lee had surrendered his troops to General U.S. Grant. Papa George had a pretty good joke about fleeing Grant. The Southern troops, led by General John B. Gordon, a Mason, were marching in columns toward the Northern troops, who were standing in formation waiting for the Southerners to stack their arms and fold their flags, which was kind of customary pretty much for a very long time. You had that happening at Yorktown during the Revolutionary War, with Cornwallis surrendering to Washington. You also had, who was actually kind of I don't want to bash our British people. Or our
We
British.
have a few out there, right?
We have a few out there. I don't want to bash him, but Cornwallis was kind of a bitch. He didn't even show up to surrender. He let his second in command do it, which is kind of a corny ass way to do it. But anyway, I digress. But not for nothing. General Lee kind of did the same thing. He kind of left it to his second in command to surrender, which was kind of it's a bitch move. If you lost, you lost. I mean, if we're talking in terms of looks, Joe should have surrendered to me like 6 podcasts ago.
Here we go. Need I remind you who won the Battle of the Bastards? Need I remind
Who
you?
did win? Well, I wasn't part of it.
Was that ever determined?
I think it was determined that Puppet George won.
I think it was determined that Puppet George won. So
I'll just leave that there.
Anyway, they were told to stack their arms and fold their flags. Suddenly, a shifting of arms is heard. Gordon looked up with an alarm. There was nothing to fear. General Joshua Chamberlain had ordered, well, that's General Chamberlain. He was a famous guy. He had ordered his troops to assume the position of honor answering honor. Immediately, the Confederate troops snapped to attention and returned the honor. I don't know what honor answering honor is. Maybe it's probably
like a sign of respect, kind of.
Probably coming to attention and saluting, if I had to assume. It was the first act to heal the wounds of the nation that had spent 4 years and 618,000 lives in the Civil War. That command of honor, answering honor. Ken's throwing his fucking phone, so I mean, we're fine.
It's just a phone.
That command of honor, answering honor was ordered by a Mason. Major General Joshua Chamberlain was a member of United Lodge No. 8, Brunswick, Maine. After the war, he became governor, blah, 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 blah. And as for the closing example, we go back a few years, but now we are again on our own state's soil at Gettysburg. Clearly, the guy who wrote this was from Pennsylvania. Yeah. And perhaps the best example of the ties of brotherhood which occurred on the Battle of Gettysburg. This battle, the turning point of the war, saw 93,000 Federalist troops during the battle with 71,000 Confederates. Of those numbers, more than 35,000 were killed and or wounded in the 3 days of fighting from July 1st to July 3rd, 1863. Of the men who fought, 17,930 were Freemasons, including roughly 5,600 who became casualties. Whew, that's a staggering number if you think about it. Let's put it this way. That's more Masons who fought in that battle and roughly died in that battle than the entire state of Connecticut.
Wow. When you put it in that
Think about
perspective,
it.
yeah.
That's insane. That's a huge number. One of the most famous events occurred at Gettysburg was a huge Confederate infantry push known as Pickett's Charge, which we didn't know how Pickett's Charge worked out for the South. Not knocking, but I'm just saying charging uphill against again.
It was a move of desperation for sure.
I'm a military guy, so I know that charging uphill against a military force that's entrenched is
Not
the
a good idea.
dumbest goddamn idea you could possibly come out with. Again, I'm huge into military strategy and everything.
It's taught, I'm sure it's taught as a no-no.
Okay, again, I've listened to Sun Tzu's Art of War. If you are going to charge up a hill against an entrenched force, make sure the sun is at your back, because now your enemy is blind. Food for thought.
Yeah.
Just in case, shit hits the fan. Just throwing it out there.
In case we ever have to do that.
In case we have to do that. I'd be a great military commander. It's just too bad I didn't go to college.
Mr. Too
Go on, make a Puppet
Serious,
George joke. Make a Puppet George joke. Go
No,
on.
I'm good. I'm the best at everything.
Hey,
I'd be the best.
you can still command a commandery of Knights
Absolutely.
Templar better than any of us.
I most certainly can. And actually, when we did that commercial, that was totally against me.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
I take my own shots at
you.
myself, so I just wanted everyone to know. I got to throw that out there because somebody's probably sitting there pissed off.
Talking about me.
You're talking about me.
Nobody can give you any crap if you're always making fun of yourself.
I make fun of myself nonstop. However,
So do
the commercial we're going to be doing, and actually, matter of fact, we're going to plug it right now while we're at it. We're going to plug our commercial right now.
Break time.
I paused it.
What commercial are we?
We're still going to be live, but we're going to take a break. We're doing Illuminati Brotherhood Recruiter.
There you go. You took the Nigerian part out.
Hey, you want to record it live? The commercial?
Yeah, we could do that. Show them how the sausage is made.
We'll show them.
And how
Who's
it's
live right now?
incorrectly made. And
I think we've got 6 people. I think Rafferty's live. Joe Schultz is live. Lynx was, but then he's got to go to work because I guess
All right.
day over there.
So we are going to record our commercial live. Who wants to see how the sausage is made?
What do you mean, sausage? You said sausage. Now that I know there are people watching, I'm totally going to screw it up. You don't want to take this time.
That just means that the singing side of it, I have to do with more emphasis.
Right. Oh, because
I have to actually.
Do you go back and re-record yourself?
No.
Oh, okay. I was gonna
No. Everything. No.
Fucked up.
If you're doing it live, I'm doing it
If
live.
I do it in one take,
I'm doing
you
it-
do it in like 15, that would be screwed up. You know? That would be so messed
No. I do not go home and I re-edit so that
Okay. I believe you.
Let's see here. What do we got? Yeah, we're gonna do it live.
All right.
We're gonna do it live. We'll record the
Do it
commercial
live.
live so that our listeners can actually hear how this goes down.
Live
And I'm
commercial.
hoping to God that Ken
Screws
screws up like
absolutely.
5 times, just so I can hear him drop an
I'm
F-bomb.
not gonna swear. I mean, I know people are watching.
For those who don't know, on Patreon, I actually posted all 3 of your screw ups.
Did you really?
I did. I dropped all 3 of your F-bombs, and you never F-bomb, which is the best
I
part.
try really hard to be the good shepherd, be a child of God, but not getting a commercial down in one take. That's something that'll make me swear for sure.
You got it to your phone, right? You actually have it?
What, Patreon?
No, the
Oh yeah,
You have the words,
yeah, I
right? You
saw
have the
that.
lyrics,
Yep,
all right,
yep,
so.
yep. I read through it.
All right, good.
I practiced it a couple times. Doesn't mean I'm not going to screw it up anyway. But
That's gonna be the best part. I hope you do screw it up. It's just gonna be funny.
try not to. There's not a lot of alliteration in this one.
I literally have like
That's
4
usually
words
what
during my
screws me up.
singing part.
Yeah, I know your part's easy.
My part's either.
I have to like do.
We
all
can
the-
switch it up one day. I don't mind. Like,
You can try. I mean, I can't hit high notes, so that's just not going to work.
neither can I. It sounds like I'm
It'd just be
freaking
my
strangling a
voice.
cat.
No. You know, at least you have the high range that I. My voice wouldn't crack. I can't do falsetto. It's not my thing. Ask Danny Sharkus next time he's here about the last time we did karaoke together.
Really?
He'll tell you all about.
I will murder karaoke. Depends on how many beers I have in me, but I will kill a karaoke.
Yeah,
My favorite song is Evanescence, Bring Me to Life. I can do the male part. But
Oh,
it's
God.
not.
Every guy thinks he can do the male part of that duet.
But I can, though. I got rap, too. I'll trap a little Linkin Park. I don't mind.
Right Worshipful Brother George keeps saying that he can rap,
I can rap.
but we haven't heard it yet.
I heard it.
Joe
I
heard
heard
it.
him rap.
Joe heard it. Thank you, Joe.
I didn't say it was good, but he can do it.
I don't believe it.
Peter Dangle says /wave. I'm assuming that means do the wave.
Or
Does it
maybe
mean
he's
he's waving?
waving.
Maybe.
Unless it's
Maybe
an
he's just
emoji. It
waving.
might be an emoji thing that didn't come across our thing.
Sounds like it's something from Internet Relay Chat, IRC.
All right, Ken, you done smoking?
Yep. I'm ready.
All right, you guys are gonna watch the live way we do this. Ken, you gotta put these on.
Oh, I gotta put.
I gotta play the music so you can hear it.
This is where I just sit back and look pretty.
I'm actually going to kill your
Wow,
mic.
those are so loud.
Yeah, I'm going to kill your mic.
Whoa.
Tell me when you're ready.
It's so loud. Wow.
Yeah. It's really not, though. Once I freaking play it back, it's not loud.
Okay, I gotta come way back here. Hold on. Opening lyrics.
You bring it up.
Rafferty bringers of barbecue.
Huh?
Rafferty's posting pictures of barbecue. It's so freaking good. It brings them up.
All right. Let's see here.
Ready?
Not yet. I got to bring it up.
This mic stand is fucking terrible.
Quiet, Puppet George. All right. I got your mic shut off anyway. So, is it playing? Oh, no, it's not because I don't have you plugged into the computer. Can you hear it now? All right. So, I'm going to. All right. Ready? Let's start a new one. Let's see here. Perfect.
There's so many spelling mistakes in this, George.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it underlines it with a little squiggle. You would think you would.
I don't believe you.
Brother Rude.
Brother Rude.
And he just like sees a squiggle. He's like, whatever. I don't care. This is
Shut
what
up.
screws me up.
Where do you see Brother Rude?
In the first line there, where it's underlined in red squiggles, which indicates a spelling mistake. No, not seeing it.
No.
It's the second line. Today we salute you. Brother Rude. Maybe you fixed the spelling mistake after you
Maybe I
said
fix it afterward.
Yeah. Okay.
But you got it though, right?
Yeah, I got it.
All right. I gotta scroll down just a hair so I can freaking get to my part. All right, ready?
Ready.
All right, I'm recording.
The Freemasons podcast presents Real Brothers of Genius.
Real Brothers of Genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Illuminati Brotherhood Recruiter.
Mr. Brother Illuminati. Ah, shit! Damn it!
Real.
I never screw up, and I'm the one who.
There's the magic. And there
I never. Son of a bitch! All right, I'll start over again. All right. I'm recording that one as Brother George Screw Up. Son of a bitch. I never mess up. I never mess up.
Brother shot collar trivia player and shot.
Whoever messes up the take first.
Whoever messes up the take first.
Love it.
Oh my God. I can't believe I screwed that up. That was terrible. All right, ready?
Yep.
You're up.
The Freemasons podcast presents Real Brothers of Genius.
Real Brothers of Genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Illuminati Brotherhood Recruiter.
Mr. Illuminati Brotherhood Recruiter.
Only you can flood a Facebook page promising money, power, wealth, and fame.
Oh, I got ass lightning.
Lion skull, vulture piss, 3 white candles from Bed Bath & Beyond. You're going to show the world what it means to be part of nothing.
I think that scented candle is cucumber melon.
Can I get the ritual on the internet? No, it must come from Madagascar.
Oh, it'll be there in the morning.
And even though your English is horrible, you're still going to say that you're from the Grand Illuminati Lodge of the United States of America.
Oh, you swear you're from Michigan.
So crack open an ice-cold orange dry, you illuminated brother from Botswana, because only you can make this world a better place, one scam at a time.
Mr. Illuminati Brotherhood Recruiter.
Brought to you by the Freemasons Podcast, Seymour, Connecticut.
I still screwed it up.
You did.
I added 2 extra words. That's all right. It'll work. It'll work.
You're going to have to compress it a little bit because
We went over.
we went past the end of
That's all right.
the music track, but it's fine. I'm sure you can tweak it.
I
Started
tweak
a little
it.
sooner.
I tweak it, so it'll be all right.
Got it in 2.
All right. All right. I can't believe I screwed that shit up. Oh my God.
I can't believe
I never
done
screw up.
something like
I
this.
never screwed up. It's usually Ken that's
No, I'm always so good at this.
and I totally fucking ruined it. Oh, that's funny. All right. All right. You ready to go live again? Or you need a minute.
We're already live, aren't we?
No, I mean, you want to go finish it up?
Yeah, I'll jump in when you guys do.
All right. So, make a new file. All right. You ready, Joe?
Yes, sir.
All right. So what we're going to do is, for those that are live, we are going to answer questions now at this point because we pretty much ended our thing. So if you're live and you're watching, and you got questions for us, fire them in. We're going to go live. I'm going to start recording in a minute.
Ask if the audio's still good.
Yeah. And how's the audio? Somebody better comment.
Don't forget to laugh.
Peter Daigle says laugh out loud. So he must have heard my complete, absolute ruining. I ruined that one. It's crazy though. Like I never screw up. Like I have the easiest part, realistically speaking. Like you do the majority of the part. Like you do the majority of the commercial, and I have like the most minuscule part of the commercial.
Yeah, but you're singing it.
And
It's different.
Butchered it though. Like I've ruined it. So anybody got any questions? We'll take a couple questions before we end this.
Just don't make a habit out of it.
Just make a habit of screwing it up. Dude, I got like you on like 6 different screw ups, so it's fine. Like I got a little bit of grace.
It's hard.
But so anyway, if you got any questions, fire them in quick because we're going to go live. We're gonna go back, and then and the audio's good too.
Nice.
Perry
Thank
says it's
you.
good. Steve says it's good. Peter says it's good. Where did you find your stories? What website? Oh, I'll actually give it to you. I am not recording at the moment, so I'm just kind of going off on a whim here. My stories actually come from angelfire.com/me/masons.html.
Angel Fire was like a make your own website thing.
Angel Fire is a make your own
MySpace
website.
days.
So,
Yeah.
but this was actually, if I may, while I'm on it, this was actually, I'm looking for the source of it.
Mine actually came from freemasoninformation.com.
Right. I'm looking for the author of this, but this is, here we go. He's got an email, but don't email him. My assumption is it came from a Mason because Masons are usually pretty good for putting out good information. And this, I mean, they have dates and everything cited, so I can't see that this being a BS part of it. Angel Fire is not exactly my most favorite website to go off
Well,
of.
I mean, anybody can make a website. They could be legitimate.
They could be legitimate. These could be legitimate stories, but I mean, these are all. It's written. Excuse me. It's written by John Howey. John Howey. John Howey. So, if any of this is wrong, you can punch him in the head.
It's not George's fault.
It's not my fault. This is just the website I had. And again, I read these stories and I thought they were pretty cool. Can you add links? I could add links. Actually, let me do it.
Stories, yeah.
To these stories? Sure, I can. I'm going to actually copy and paste it right here. I'm going to I think I just posted it. Yeah, there we go. I did. I posted a Smithsonian video of the rebel yell on the community page recorded by Confederate veterans. Wow.
Interesting.
The rebel yell. With a rebel yell. Go on, Joe.
Rise more, 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 more.
the rebel yell was actually in the Civil War. It was wasn't really a yell. It was more like a woo, 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 woo. Like they made a lot of noise prior to attacking, which is actually, if you're any interest in battle tactics, it's more of a psychological thing. Psyops war. Whereas if you yell and make the most noise, actually Spartans were very well known for this. Spartan commanders would cause their troops to actually take their spears and bang on their shields in order to make as much noise as possible to try to deter the or psych out, so to speak, the enemy that they were up against. I believe
people out.
Romans did it as well during the Roman wars and stuff that they did.
So the research that I looked up came from a couple sources. That story of the USS DeKalb and the that story of St. Francisville came from Atlas Obscura, which is not the best source on the in the universe. I understand that. I also looked at a couple other sources just to verify it. And the Advocate, which is
A hole in my lip, sorry.
yeah, that's all right. The Advocate, which is a publication, it's a newspaper in New Orleans, published a story as well, because this St. Francisville thing, they actually reenact it every year. They reenact the burying of
That's pretty cool.
Lieutenant
pretty
Commander
cool,
Hart
actually.
every year.
Road trip.
So
Road trip.
yeah,
Oh my God! Can you
it'd
imagine
be a lot
that?
of fun.
Oh my
We have
God.
to Facebook Live the whole thing.
Facebook Live the whole thing.
We should do that up to Masonicon next year.
It will bring Puppet George.
Absolutely.
Puppet George is
It'd be
coming.
fun.
So if anybody's interested in Masonicon, it's actually Ezekiel Bates Lodge, and we haven't. I haven't booked our next booth yet, but I promise you I will.
Next year, I'm
And
going.
we will be there, and we are bringing Puppet George.
We will
and,
be there in force.
We will be there in force. It's going to be a lot of fun. I actually had a lot of fun the last time. My only. Go ahead, Joe. Make a train joke. Make a train joke.
Come same time every day.
But it's 7:23. It's a little bit behind schedule.
Why is it gotta
today.
come behind? Come by same time every day. I don't get it.
We're going to be up there. My only regret is that I didn't get a chance to see brother Dennis Burns, who does uponthepoint.com. He was not there. He was not able to make it, but it was a good time. We had a lot of fun. So anybody who is interested in coming, we actually broke for lunch, and we had quite a few cocktails during lunch. We had a good time.
Really?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Sorry, I
So-
missed that one.
Planning on going this year.
All right, so we're gonna fire this back up, right? So 3, 2, 1, and we are back. Jesus Christ, I can't even start the beginning.
Just like
of
you
it.
messed up the commercial, you can't even do the intro.
And we are back. Wow, I am terrible.
Just
today.
edit that part.
I am. I will. I will. Don't worry. Because yeah, I fell apart. But anyway, we are back. So brother Joseph Schultz says that I left it open to the people who are watching Facebook Live for any questions, any stories of lodge meetings on a battlefield during the war. Actually, there are many. If you go on the Freemasons podcast Facebook page, I think Brother Joe or somebody posted one not too long ago, correct? About New Orleans, where they actually, I've heard many stories of where the either side was actually scrambling across lines to go visit a Masonic lodge being held. I think it was at Gettysburg, correct?
I don't know that one. That's
I think it might have
story,
been.
though.
I think you posted. I thought I could have
No.
swore you posted
I
it.
think it was Mike the intern that might have.
Mike the intern, and he did that on the podcast page.
I think it might have been Discord.
Might have been Discord. Okay. So what I'll do is I will actually go through and I will actually I will forward that to the main page. But yes, there are many stories of where Masons would cross across battle lines to hold lodge on the battlefield. And I know it was most specifically done during Gettysburg. Gettysburg being the culminating battle of the Civil War. I almost said World War II, dumbass. I'll need a selfie with everyone in Puppet George when I go again next year. We were just talking about going to Masonicon. We met Peter Daigle there at Masonicon. And, again, I don't consider myself a celebrity or anything like that. So when
we're just normal guys.
just normal guys.
Sit in front of a
but
microphone.
brother
We're not
Peter
celebrities.
Daigle walked up to me and he's like, hey, Brother George, how you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. Oh, hey. And he said, oh, I'm Peter Daigle. I said, oh, like, wow, I was in shock. Like,
If you want, we could do something where for like, I don't know, $5, Puppet George can call you and leave you a birthday message or something like that. we can work something. Anybody?
That would be freaking great.
Message.
Hey, happy birthday, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, we could
That would
work
be
that
fun.
out. You get a call on your birthday.
Yeah, I met Peter Daigle very briefly. Dan Lewis joined us to the Facebook Live. Where are you? Why aren't you up here playing with us?
Bring food.
Bring food.
You should bring a pizza.
Food.
But anyway,
Oh,
Really
pizza
use a
would be
pizza
great
right now, right?
so we pretty much covered many stories that in the Civil War, and again, it's many stories about brother upon brother, as Kenneth said, and it's a very it really brings to light many of these stories of how tight the fraternity is. That even you're in war, and you're able to cross lines to actually spend time with a brother or attend a meeting because it's that important to you. Even the stories about Masons protecting a Masonic hall of the opposing force that you're up against. I find that absolutely fascinating.
Or Masons going above and beyond, even on the same side, to look out for one another. There are stories from World War II and Vietnam that I've heard that.
Absolutely. Vietnam, really.
Yep.
Masonicon, Brother Joseph Schultz. Masonicon is held at Ezekiel Bates Lodge in Attleboro, Massachusetts. It's usually an all-day event. I think people show up the day before. We showed up the day of.
Yeah, I think the day before, I think they have a cocktail hour or something the night before.
But it's at Ezekiel Bates Lodge. I want to say 142.
I know it's Ezekiel Bates. I don't remember the number.
I don't remember exactly, but it's in Attleboro, Massachusetts. So we'll be up there. We'll definitely be up there next year, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We usually go. We went to where did we go? We went down the road, not too far.
You're asking me. I wasn't there. I was at my son's baseball game.
I'm trying to recount in my memory. It was a little, I guess, diner down the road, and we had some cocktails. We had some great food. The food was phenomenal.
Was it a dive bar?
No, it was not a dive bar. It was actually
I know how you love dive bars.
I love dive bars, but no, this one was actually a restaurant, and it was like a diner. I want to say I always make the joke, and I've had this joke since I worked at a particular mechanic place. Across the street was the Shiny Diner. The Shiny Diner.
Was that
the Athenian parade. It had a very Athenian feel for it.
Greek diners.
Did you go with the Holy Diver reference? Is that where you're going?
That's what I was going
for. RJD?
Yes.
Shiny Diner.
Shiny Diner. But, all right. So, did you say that the total death, Brother Perry Bartovic, our senior warden, did you say the total death toll of brothers in the Civil War? Yeah, I don't have the death toll of the Civil War.
Did you say it was
I said Gettysburg.
To the state of Connecticut?
That was the
Battle of Gettysburg.
Battle of Gettysburg. It was let's see, I have it right here actually. Of the men who fought, 17,930 were Freemasons. So that's those who fought. 17,000. That's more of probably Connecticut and Massachusetts combined. Including the roughly 5,600 who became casualties. So 5,600 became casualties. That is more than the state of Connecticut. So, Senior Warden, Brother Perry. Hopefully that, Ed.
And at the time, it was roughly 2% of the entire United States population, which...
That's insane.
Think about
That's a big
think
number.
About that.
Because don't forget, the United States was basically from the Mississippi to the eastern seaboard.
Yeah, more or less. It wasn't really.
The United States now obviously goes all the way to California, across the Midwest and everything. But from the Mississippi to the right is pretty much, and you had Texas in there, which Texas was part of the southern states, I believe, at that point. And I think you had the Oklahoma territories and stuff like that. It wasn't technically a state yet.
It wasn't very well populated.
Right.
West
It
of
was,
Mississippi
it was, the Wild West, so to speak. Brother Joseph said road trip. Yeah, definitely a road trip down there.
Mm-hmm.
That would be cool. That'd be fun, actually, for all of us to jump
To
in a car
Louisiana.
to Louisiana.
I
I think we would go Facebook Live with all the karaoke we'd be busting out.
Oh my
we have to
God.
stop at
Can you
every
imagine?
karaoke bar
I
on
used
the
to
way
read Word
down.
Up magazine.
Yeah, I'm more like 80s metal guy, so anything like I do know some love songs. As we were singing "Hello,"
You are not singing a love song. I will throw you out
are you
at the
talking
first rest stop. If you
Well,
start
come on.
busting out with
God, you heard me sing "Hello" before. That was awesome.
We could all get behind like some Cyndi Lauper or something. Some Evanescence.
Inside my mind.
I can't. We need to shut this off.
You know what? We're all going to take separate cars.
We're all taking separate cars. So
Let's-
listen, I'm
You guys-
Ubering the
you
whole way
guys, I
down.
hate you all. Hello.
Oh shit. So but anyway. Anybody got any questions before we close this up? It's now or never.
I thought we would have more by now.
I thought we'd have more by now, but Perry asked a couple quick questions. Perry asked a question. There's a couple good questions.
I could
but-
tell that Vietnam story.
Go ahead, fire away.
All right, so this was actually. This
I don't
is-
know this one, so this is interesting.
Well, this is secondhand. This is like a personal story from one of the brothers in our lodge.
oh,
So I'm not going
really?
to say his name. I'm sure he wouldn't care, but and he's one of those brothers who's a 50-year plus member of the fraternity, and he's always good for a story. He's one of those guys who just rattles off story after story, and he's probably told you the same one 6 times,
Mhm.
and he tells you, stop me if I've told you this one before, but you don't stop him because the stories are so good. You just want to hear it again,
Right,
so you
right,
pretend like you've never heard it.
Right.
But he had a story, and I think it was his brother-in-law was in the Vietnam War.
If I may.
Yep.
Just again, I'm not knocking anybody, but the last story you told was actually found from Freemasons for Dummies.
What are we talking about now?
Which one?
The one about the brother from Germany who didn't know how to speak and he rearranged the furniture and everything. You said that was from a brother in your
Yeah, there was a brother who told me that one.
right, but it was also found in the same similar story in Freemasons for Dummies,
Okay.
and actually
Well, I
one
mean,
of our listeners kind of fucking coined.
Not
on
for
that.
nothing. He may have gone on the internet and found
All
that story
right,
and
go ahead. It's a story. Go ahead, fire away.
made it his own or something. But it was a brother in the lodge that told me that story. So anyway,
Fire away. I'm
This one-
I'm just breaking your.
I mean,
balls.
you could probably pull this one up on the internet too. I don't know, but he told me that his brother-in-law was in the Vietnam War.
Mhm.
Right. And he was a pilot. So he was piloting one of those scout planes. They're like Cessnas, like the lightweight, unarmored aircraft, not
Right,
like a
right.
jet or anything, but
Right,
a
right.
propeller aircraft that didn't really have any armament or armor or anything like that. And it was just used for reconnaissance and scouting and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So he's, flying around, and on his patrol, he sees a group of U.S. Marines
Mhm.
that are being attacked
Mhm.
by the North Vietnamese.
Mhm.
And he calls in, he gets on the radio, and he gets on the radio with whoever the radio man was on the ground
Mhm.
for the Marines, and asks them their situation. And he tells this gentleman who told me the story that he doesn't remember what he said on the radio, but he called in an airstrike and helped those Marines out, and then flew back to his fire base, landed his plane, and that was it. He never thought about it again. He went to sleep that evening, and while he was sleeping, he feels his bed being picked up in the air. The bed drops to the ground,
All right.
and he wakes up with a start,
Mhm.
and he looks at the foot of his bed, and he sees this big brick shithouse U.S. Marine, and he looks at him, and he's like, "Are you the brother that saved our asses out there today?" And he's like, "I guess." And he's like, "I just wanted to thank you."
Wow.
So this Marine went on a hunt for this guy who happened to be piloting this plane that saved their asses calling in an airstrike that day.
Wow.
And he said, how did he know he was a brother? To this day, he doesn't remember what he said on the radio, but it was something that
They had a Masonic undertone.
that guy on the ground knew that the guy flying the plane was a Mason and went out looking for him and just wanted to go and thank him.
Quite interesting.
So again, It's a story. It's a story from a brother who I trust.
Hey, I'm not breaking balls.
So I'm only going based on what I know, but I thought it was a great story and figured I would tell it here.
Joseph
So I gotta
Schultz,
break
he says, I know that several Grand Lodges of the North sent money to the Southern Grand Lodges after the war. Confederate money was worthless. He said the Grand Lodges were broke, basically, at the point.
Wouldn't shock me.
Wouldn't shock
Yeah.
me.
Because they had their own currency that was pretty much,
Right.
other than
Devalued.
at that point, was worth nothing.
Right.
Now you might get a couple bucks for it on eBay, but it was worth nothing at the time.
Oh, now? Confederate money as a collector's item?
Yeah. It's really worth
probably
something, yeah.
Millions.
More than a few bucks.
Yeah.
Well, I was being a little facetious. Way to handle the sarcasm there. Good job.
All right, what do you say, brothers? You want to wrap this up?
Let's wrap it up.
Yeah,
Let's
no new
wrap it
questions or anything from anybody?
I got nothing right now. So
All right.
we're gonna wrap it up. We're going to close it down, and we will be around next time. Again, I'm going to probably post this one. I've uploaded the last episode with amended changes because I had to basically cut out the entire shock collar part of it because the audio was just terrible because of all the issues we had. So
On the Facebook Live version of that, the audio was pretty good, but it's probably too late to splice it in now, right? You already published it.
no, I didn't publish it yet.
Oh, okay.
No.
I might be able to get the audio track from that. Might be
I
all
could
right.
splice it in, yeah. But this one will probably go out Tuesday or Wednesday. So
Whatever happened to that lost episode that you and I did up here?
I put it on a Patreon.
Oh, okay.
I made the
gotcha.
Patreon only,
Okay.
and
cool.
it was
Gotta go check
it was
that one out.
Freemasonry and astronomy.
Yep.
No, I definitely have it.
Celestial alignments. and
Celestial
stuff like
alignments.
that. Yeah,
It's,
that was
if you want to hear it, it's on Patreon.
cool.
Again, I try to
Yeah, we
make
don't do
some episodes strictly for Patreon only. So if you're interested and you want to hear that lost episode, it's not really lost. I just called it a lost
No, that's
episode.
like a whole full-on episode.
That's a
an
full-on
hour-long
episode. It's
deal.
about an hour long. We did a whole thing about me and me and brother Ken were talking about astronomy and
We were
celestial
looking through our
alignments.
telescopes out into the
Right.
great ether.
That's great. We were on the roof of this building.
I've got a telescope if we want to put one in
Spiritual.
here.
I do too. We
I
should
s-
really go out there with a telescope one of these days.
I've got
We're
one
all
we can
pretty
have.
high.
I have a telescope. I got a big one
We
too.
could- of course you do.
Somebody's going to read in the paper that Freemasons.
Son of a
Of course. you do.
You already knew where the hell I was going with it. So, all right, what do you say, brothers? We lock it up.
Let's lock it up.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So for the Freemasons podcast, I am Right Worshipful Brother George. Marjorie signing off.
Worshipful Brother Joe signing off.
And Worshipful Brother Ken signing off.
Have a good night, everyone. Oh, and I'm shutting down live. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.